Hey everybody, welcome to Lauren.live. I've got Tandy Gutierrez with me in Brooklyn. What's up?
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So good to have you on the show. So Tandy has a lot going on and a lot to offer. She's a healer. She's the founder of Unicorn Wellness, which we'll get into. She'll talk about that. She does tarot card reading, and she's all about like movement, fitness, and spirituality. So I'm going to let her really tell you all about that kind of stuff, but we're going to touch on tarot card reading. I really told her, I was like, I want to talk more about that because I've been hearing a lot about it and I've actually never had it done. So let's dive into that. But first, I would love if you would just give an intro on yourself and then also just a little, your spiritual journey. How did you get into this stuff? How did you realize, hey, I might have some intuitive gifts and healing abilities? And then we'll chat about whatever else comes up.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Totally.
About a little bit about myself. I've really been in the fitness and wellness industry for over 20 years now. That's a funny thing to say. But I started off as a performer, as a dancer and a singer, and moved into teaching Pilates. It was not a path I chose at all. It was a path that continued to present itself to me. And it became a place where it was much easier to work there, much more rewarding, much healthier to work there in between shows and in between gigs, rather than in a bar or a restaurant scenario. The healing work resonated with my soul, and it just kind of took me on a path from teaching and training, like in a studio level, to then becoming the first regional manager for Equinox Fitness in Southern California down the road. So I had celebrity clientele. I managed the group fitness program there, and trained the teachers, and then had my own client base there. But within that career path and pattern, I'm a mom, I have 2 sons, I have a stepson, and I had my own wellness journey as well. So there was a lot of injuries, a lot of physical struggles that culminated in finally being diagnosed with celiac and a thyroidectomy and IBS. But between all of those things converged to what I teach and what we launched in 2013. So we launched an online wellness studio, almost 9 years ago, when it was super not the cool thing to do, because I wanted to bring an offering that was accessible, that was much more calm and kinder, and with a lot more intellect, but also with heart to it. So this becomes about the spiritual journey, right? That I was always very drawn to the occult, right? I grew up in a very religious family. I'm originally from Oklahoma. I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and that's already a little side eye from people of like, is that a cult? Like, what is this? And so I come from a blend of like very religious doctrine with a grandmother who was like super woo-woo, like woke up every morning, journaled out all of her dreams, kept all of her journals, for so many years, talked to her guardian angels, would call me, send me letters in college of like, I dreamed about this. You need to be aware of this. Like, I'm worried about this, or there was this insight. So it was just part of the mix, but it was very confused. And then there became a point in the path where I was 16, I could drive, and I ended up at this, hashtag, like in quotations, new age bookstore. And it just felt like coming home. It was like there were books on astral travel, and there was Louise L. Hayes, You Can Heal Your Life, and then Wayne Dyer's work. And it was just like it all resonated as truth. And so I started meditating on my own, and I had a deck of tarot cards. Then there was a tarot reader that I got connected with who read angel cards. So it was this language and this mixed language of spirituality and guardian angels that was comfortable to me that really began it. And so that first point was, she did a reading at one point where she was like, you're a reader. This is what you're going to spend your life doing. And I was like, I'm 16. Like,
What do you do with that?
And I did embark on it. I took it very seriously. It resonated at the heart level. And then there, about 2 years later, there was a moment with my mom that she was like, caught me meditating in the house. And it was absolutely not okay. This was very much literally the devil's work, and not okay. That language was just, there were layers of it. I knew the truth of it, but it wasn't enough for me to go warrioring for it at that point.
Sure.
So it's work and things that have come in and out of my life. I then, became a teacher after being a performer. And around the age of 32, I'm 43 now, it just got really loud. And that story is kind of too long to tell, but we moved into a house that was haunted. Wow. And when we were putting books away, like when we'd moved, my deck of tarot cards from my teens fell out. And there were cards like in random books that kept appearing.
Wow.
And I just thought, this is too loud.
Yeah.
Like I just always recognized those pieces. And at that point, I began a practice again and started it personally, was making a lot of difference. It reached a level very quickly that then I pulled it into sessions with my clients and they were kind of blown away, right? Like people anticipate and think it's going to be silly, made up, disconnected, just weird. And it has so many negative connotations to it. But what they all came to was like, it's just helpful. So let's keep doing that. And because my practice kept getting deeper and the call was just really loud in meditation, it was gifted to me, Unicorn Wellness, the name, to transition the name of the business, to really put it into the forefront that for true authenticity, I had to integrate all of myself into this work. And that's essentially where we are today.
Wow. Okay. Remind me, sorry, I know you said it. How long has Unicorn Wellness been around?
The online wellness studio, we've been around since 2013.
Okay.
And so it's taken about 3 rebrands and reiterations. The work has continued to be the same. We just kept layering and adding it in. Okay. And we changed the name. I think it's been 4 years ago now. And I really was annoyed because it was such a cutesy name. And I was like, I would not have chosen this.
Right.
And the guidance was like, we don't care. This is what you're doing.
This is what's going to work. This is what's going to be. Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, we're going to get more into that in a second, but I want to touch on a few things from your story, which is super cool and unique. Because I've had a few guests on too, and I have friends that are very, strict Christians, and I went to a Christian school. Like I'm very familiar with the faith. I've been in it myself, not deeply, but for a short time in my life. And like I said, I have good friends still that practice. And how did you find that transition from going from a pretty strict conservative to your mom being like, that's the devil's work? Because I've actually had friends where I've told them like I'm seeing like chakra colors when I meditate, and like I tell them like it's all the good stuff, like happy, love, forgiveness, like all the stuff that you study in your same religion. It's like happy, good stuff, and they're like, oh, I just worry that's like Satan at work, and I'm like, no, like it's so not, and like what did you do with that? Like how did you make it your own and like have the confidence to like move into a different spiritual path?
I, in full honesty, had a pretty traumatic upbringing and background in a lot of ways. So there were so many pieces that were already putting chinks in the armor of that being what was a fit for me in the integrity of the parents who raised me. So I'm adopted. It was a very abusive situation. It was also a lot of, my father was the largest independent grocer in Oklahoma. So there was a lot of money involved. And so again, that like takes the sheen, like a lot of things are excused because of that. And then he went to federal prison. So there were so many breakdowns of like the choices they were making and the pace that they were going, that it was another layer that the religion that they were practicing wasn't serving. Right. And there was so much anger in my household that it took me a long time, that's for sure, to like come out of the witch closet. I mean, it really did. It was a coming out. It impacted my business. It impacted my career. It was definitely a thing. But you asked earlier, like how I knew. My intuition has earnestly always been so strong. I have been in very volatile, violent situations. And that little whisper, right, has honestly saved me every single time since I was a child. And because of my grandmother, because she had a different perspective and a different language around it, for some reason, it bred very early in me that like God, universe, goddess, that all of these narratives, they're narratives. And as humans, we want a story and a narrative to follow, and we need one. Yeah. But that at the heart of these pieces of spirituality, of religions, the ascended masters are the ascended masters. They came here to teach, and there's many of them. Yep. And so I never saw one as right and the other as wrong. Right? It's like what resonates for me, what rings as truth, what works for me, and what cultivates a path in my life that brings joy and abundance and healing and peace. And those things didn't, right? Religion as a doctrine, I think we're pretty versed on how challenging that is in the shame category, particularly as women. Yeah. So the transition for me took a long time, but earnestly was more, I mean, it's in there, that shame, it's in there, you know, that you're bad.
Right.
But it was not strong enough to hold it back. It felt better to be in it and to be practicing and to be helping and to feel like, whoa, the people teaching and the language felt very freeing and very empowering, which is not what religion felt like to me.
Yes. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for explaining that, because I'm sure there's lots of people, as you know, people are waking up every single day and becoming more openly spiritual versus like, you know, specific denominations or not having any beliefs at all. And I know a lot of people feel shame or confusion. So your story is helpful.
Well, and you did a great podcast, you know, about as far as like channeling Jesus and really perceiving it, you know, him as an ascended master and a teacher that's still accessible. And it's fascinating because I did grow up in a very religious, you know, space. I have a lot of friends and family who are ministers. And I've had conversations where some of them really do understand the crossover of energetics and like a certain narrative will work and others won't.
Right.
And I've also had conversations where people are like blown away that, you know, Jesus Christ is not my personal savior in this lifetime and cannot understand how the conversation can still be had. And I'm like, if you think God and all the grand energetics can only come through one narrative line, it's too expansive.
Yeah. It's limiting at the same time though, to just say, this is the only way. Like it's so vast.
It's so vast.
Yes. I totally 100% agree. And yeah, that's been a cool theme. That was what that podcast was about. It had 2 different guests and friends that have been telling me they've been channeling with Jesus. And I never thought that. I always thought he was just this historical figure, and like some think he's the savior, but I never really believed that for myself. I thought he was like a good dude that was probably a clairvoyant of his time. But now hearing him coming through people right now, it's really neat because, and he's been coming through before just now, but really I'm hearing more people talk about it since we're in this crazy time and we probably need some extra help. So yeah, I think that's really cool that there are totally so many different guides out there, and different ways too. Tarot card reading, energy healing, sound healing, you know, movement, meditation, chakra clearing. Like there's so many ways to like clear yourself and get closer to source, or however you want to explain it. So, okay, cool. Well, that's really fun to like hear your story. It's super unique. And this is really random, but I was looking on your page and also above your mirror, is it a little broom?
Yeah.
So tell me about, cause I think it says wellness witch, but kind of describe in your words, like when you say witch, like what do you mean? Because there are people that like talk about witchcraft and I think it's seen as like a negative, evil thing. But then at the same time, I've had conversations with people, the stuff that we're talking about now, if we were talking about this kind of stuff in like the 1800s, we'd be seen as witches and we'd be like killed. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in modern times, like what do you, like when you call yourself like a witch or healing, like what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, to me, let's start with healing because I think that's the basis of my work is that healing is really just to make something better, right? Like it's just really succinct. Better is better. In a culture that strives for, being the best, it's like, well, how about we just strive for better right now? Yeah. These tiny incremental steps that layer over time that create like big sweeping change. And so there's lots of ways to heal. You can heal through movement. I teach a Pilates-based program. Pilates was created as a rehab program. It's a healing modality, right? It looks at the vessel and the structure of the bones and all of these pieces. And so the goal in anything that I'm teaching or bringing through is to make something better, right? To not feel alone. Like the 3D incarnation is hard and it's messy and it can be very ugly. And all the teeny bits that make it better are the sweetness of it. So as a wellness witch, the term and the label of witch is very important to me as someone who graduated from an all women's college. I'm definitely a feminist, and the reclamation of that title is really important to us, right? Just like you said, if we were talking about these things at certain time periods, we would have been killed. Mm-hmm. This is about freedom of voice. This is about sovereignty. This is about empowered choice making, knowing who you really are at your gut level and going, I'm not out to hurt somebody. I'm standing within my own boundaries, my own sovereignty. And as I do that, and I learn to do that deeper and better, I help other women do that. I think when we get into the pieces of like spell casting and witchcraft, I think that's a great way to kind of go backwards. Like a spell, what is it? It's intention plus ritual. That's all. So we do spells every day, right? Like every day in mainstream.
Yeah.
And so like blowing your birthday candles out, that is a spell. Right.
Or like setting an intention at yoga in your yoga mat,
Yes. Yeah. And so everyday magic is so powerful because our thoughts and where we set our intentions really do set the course of how we react versus how we respond or how things turn out. So for me, a witch is really someone who lives in the spell casting, is very aware of the intentions set, very mindful of the habits and rituals and repetition of what you're putting out in the universe. And so for me, it is in wellness. This has been the path I've been called to in the body vessel and in mentoring work, that I'm here to help you cast spells, set intentions within your rituals to cultivate the better.
Yeah. Because there could be like bad witchy witches out there too, right? But
totally
wellness, which is like positive. Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that. I think that's a good description and might kind of clear up misconceptions. People might assume it's more of a negative thing, but I love it. Okay. Well, cool. We have so much to talk about, so we're going to keep moving along. Tarot card reading. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think most people are kind of familiar with the idea. You go to usually someone or a friend if they know how to do it. You're given cards. Cards are pulled, right? Does the person pull it or do you pull the card?
So when you go to a reader, the reader will pull the cards, but every reader is different.
Okay. Well, a card is pulled either way. And then the idea is that that's something that like a message that you're supposed to get, right? Or something that you're supposed to pay attention to. But you can obviously go more in depth. That's just kind of what I've, gathered. But there's more to it, I'm sure.
Totally. So the history of it is that it was created as a parlor card game in the 1400s, right? And so it became adopted. There's some gray zone in history there, right? Yeah. Of like, it became a tool of divination. Mm-hmm. And tools of divination, again, can be anything. They can be tea leaves, they can be runes, they can be the leaves that you find outside, like anything that's aiming to bring a message through channeled from the ethers, from the unseen, from the other side, right? And so tarot can really be taken in two lanes. And I like to teach it in both lanes, right? It is a systematic way of sifting and sorting and organizing thoughts and emotions. So there's this beautiful piece of like research, that says the human brain really calms down when it looks at pictures. And so a lot of therapists have been using it and are more and more coming to terms with it because there's a comfort in looking at pictures and deciphering, right? That then allows us to get to a closer part of our soul. So the system of the tarot is 78 cards, right? There's 22 major arcana cards, and then the rest are minor arcana. The major arcana, they speak to soul-based lessons, like karmic lessons, bigger picture lessons in this lifetime. And the minor arcana are about like the day-to-day stuff, like how you're going to handle it in the day-to-day. Okay. So you can go to a reader and they'll pull cards for you. They may have you choose the cards. It's different. They can read in the systematic way. There is a traditional reading for each card. Like there's so many books, right? Yeah. And you can just go buy the book if you want to. Like this card traditionally means this thing.
Yeah.
And then you can figure out how to integrate it. Or, and again, I read from both lanes. I like to educate. I want people to know the traditional aspect of the card. But then there are those of us who do have a gift for it for whatever reason. Yeah. Messaging comes through. There are certain, languages that is not our own doing. It's not the story we're cultivating. It's what's coming through in the cards. And I am, and others are intuitive readers or psychic readers. Sure. And so that messaging really depends on the relationship between the person and the reader, who that reader, channels typically, who their guides and guardians are that they work with, and do you trust them? Right. And so the analytical human brain can be really safe and secure in the system of it. Oh, it's just cool. It's just a card game. Yeah, great. Yeah. Or if you're really on the woo-woo spiritual path and you're like, oh, no. Like, these channeled messages, this messaging, this is for me, this is the path, this is the way that it's coming through. And again, whatever cultivates better, whatever works for you, whatever becomes empowerment, whatever allows you to make decisions from a more calm and anchored space, then it's a fit, And if you're like, that totally does not resonate with me, then it's not for you, boo,
Yeah. Or, even too, it could be the reader and you aren't meshing well. Cause any of us have been to mediums, I've been to plenty, but there's certain ones that you kind of like jive with and others you're like, I just don't feel a connection. So it could be the same with tarot card readings, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's super important. And that's always been my experience as like a personal trainer and coach also. Like if you do not gel with your tarot reader, your coach, your train, like get out, just don't. Like there's a frequency thing, right? Totally. You either trust them or you don't. And if you're not in trust, it's not going to do anybody good.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Well, that's super cool. Okay. So like, I'm just pulling this like out of my ass, excuse my language, but like, I'm like, okay, you got like a card on money. I'm sure it's like more specific, some of them, but, you could like you said, you could read like the standard like book and say like, okay, this is about money, like how it plays a part in your life. Like you're like having struggles with it, And then you could also, how you read, like tie in, I'm also getting through that specifically, like you're really worried about it within your career right now. Like, is that kind of like how it could play out? Something
Absolutely.
Okay. That's really neat. It makes it more personalized.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the way that I work with clients is typically through magical mentoring, which is a 4-month process. So I don't do a lot of one-off readings anymore. So I'm working with clients long-term, but they're coming to me for that life coaching aspect, but it's channeled. So like when we do a 5-card reading, a to-do list is channeled through it. Like they'll ask a question of how to move through certain things in their life. And we just let the to-dos come through. And sometimes they're super practical, it's like, get your resume in order. And sometimes they're super woo-woo where it's like, you just need to like sit and repeat this mantra. And it's, the energetics then take care of things.
Okay. So you do incorporate tarot card reading sometimes in your personal mentoring, your individual like life coach or mentoring?
The mentoring work is based in the tarot. It is the channeled messaging that comes through. So there absolutely has to be trust between me and the mentee and the messaging that comes through in the tarot.
But that's one of your specialties is like, cause I've gone to like tons of channelers, but they've never used cards, but that's something that you really work a lot with. Okay. That's cool. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Got it. And it's one of those that as a channeler too, I don't need them. Yeah. It just makes things a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier.
It's like a physical thing to like show and like talk about. And for some people that must be very maybe it makes it more like tangible for people that might be a little bit more like skeptical of this stuff too. And they're like, ooh, this feels on,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. That's really neat. I had no idea it was so far back in history, 1400s.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And the original deck, the original artwork that typically everything's based on is the Rider-Waite deck. And the artwork was done by a woman, which is also fascinating for that period of time.
Yeah, that is.
Right.
Whoa.
So there's just really neat layers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Cool. Okay. And so then in your personal mentoring, what else do you do? You do the cards. You obviously must just do like channeling work. Do you do the stuff in person or online with people or both?
It's all online.
Okay.
Since 2013, when we launched the original wellness studio online, that's where everything is. Okay. I have autoimmune issues. It helps me manage my energies better. Mm-hmm. And as an empath and a channel, it gives an interesting layer of protection to it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And efficiency. Yeah. So everything is online, but my magical mentees, we do a phone call mid-month. So every month they will get a recorded reading with their to-do list. Then mid-month we check in, and that call is usually 75 minutes to sort through all of it. Like, did they do their to-dos that were channeled through?
Sure. Okay.
And how are the energetics playing out?
Okay. And then, but if someone did a card reading with you, you would do it over Zoom?
I don't actually meet in real time with them. So they'll send me, we'll go through and figure out their question and I will record it. The channeled aspect of it is much more efficient. When we're in person one-on-one, I used to do them live. We as humans really like to talk and we like to offer, right? And be in communication, and in channeling, it's like, it just needs to come through. Like clients end up getting more because it's an hour of channeled information, or 30 minutes to an hour. And that way, then they can process it. It's really important as humans for us to receive messaging and not interrupt messaging.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so the readers do it all kinds of different ways. This is the process that has worked best for me and really genuinely gives more value, right? Because like, how nice is it for someone to be giving to you for that period of time uninterrupted?
Yes. Yeah, that is neat.
Yeah,
that is cool. Because I've had it, in person. I've had it over Zoom. I've had readings. I've had phone call, and then I've also had via email. Some guy that I worked with, he was like, I'd actually just prefer to just write to you, like your guides are coming through. So it's crazy how different it can come through. And that's what's so fascinating. When I was like, you can just talk to me on the phone and feel it. And she's like, oh yeah, like I can tell already about you and your da-da-da. And I'm like, that is so neat. So it's neat how each, channeler has, like you said, and also that is interesting about the protection of your energy and with you, some of your, like you said, your diagnosis, it might be easier for the energy levels too. So that's neat that you've been able to kind of make it work for you and your clients. Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a process of trying, and a little trial and error of like what works, what doesn't work.
Totally.
But this setup and this template has, it's beautiful. The transitions that mentees go through and the magic and the things that they manifest that almost seem like they're not intending them to, right? Like the to-do list through the tarot readings can be so subtle and keep them in the day-to-day that by the end of the 4 months, they're like, what the, I don't know if we can curse or not.
That's okay.
Like,
I already did.
I'm like, what the heck? Like I like to drop the F-bomb a lot, but it's like, what the fuck just happened? Yeah. Like I was focused on these tiny things. I have a whole new career. Like finances are not an issue anymore. This relationship, we're not struggling anymore. We've decided to, it's not all implosive like that, but it's it just works.
Yeah. That's super cool. Dang, I love it. Okay, so you do that, but then what about the? I'm kind of trying to understand like your business model too. Then, so then if people want to come do Pilates and stuff, there are actual like physical studios and stuff too.
It's not a physical studio. Oh, okay. So the original platform of Unicorn Wellness Studio is based in the movement practice. So we launched that in 2013, and that is the heartbeat and the foundation of the work that I do. Okay. They're 30-minute movement practices. Okay. So it's a mat practice based in Pilates. You'll see yoga variations, you'll see strength and conditioning variations, but they are each macro and micro cycled in a 4-week training cycle, right? In alignment with the lunar cycle and the current zodiac season.
Okay.
So it has genuine fitness chops of moving you through balance of strength and mobility with a focus on the core because it's Pilates based, right? But it works a little extra because the week of the new moon is our constructive rest week. So that full week is, 6 days of stretching, which is not a do nothing scenario, right? It's allowing
when the moon is full.
When the moon is new.
Okay. So when it's had just been full and it's starting its cycle over.
So we have this, I consider the new moon to be like the beginning of the cycle because it's new. So it's dark of the moon. And so we start there. We can say we start there in full stretches for 6 days. Then we have 2 weeks where you're asking for moderate effort in our mat practice. Each one is 30 minutes. And then at the full moon, because the full moon in theory is supposed to juice us with energetics to finish, complete, and launch, right? That's the week that in our movement pattern, it asks the most of our effort.
Okay.
And then we circle back around again. Yes. So it's like, if you've worked with a personal trainer, I mean, I was personal trainer for years. So this is said with love and reverence. You really hire us to macro, micro cycle you in order for you to get results. So you don't burn out and so you don't get injured.
Yeah. You can't be hard all the time.
No, if there's no rest, there are literally no results because the transition phase, the cultivation of results happens in the rest stages.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So most people come to me through Unicorn Wellness Studio. They become a member on the site. They're looking for a movement practice. I also have a guided meditation on the site that's an energetic healing every month. They have the new moon and the full moon tarot readings. They have a new moon and a full moon energy forecast from me. And they start to really cycle with the energy.
That's cool.
Right. And it brings them into this whole different concept of like how to treat a vessel, how to show grace for themselves. Oh, wow. I actually get way more results in the physical body if I do less. Yeah. Like people are blown away.
And that's cool. You designed it around like the moon. And like you said, like we are so connected to the energy of the earth, other planets, the moon, the sun, space, like, yeah, that's actually brilliant how you kind of designed your. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I had that moment of like, oh, this is not me thinking this. This is something coming through. And I was like, why does no one else do this?
Yeah, that's really neat because there's so much going on. I feel like even with our womanly cycles or like, I mean, even people that are like skeptical of all this stuff, I'm like, we know like the tides are connected. Like there's so much, even my friends that are nurses, they're like, whenever it's a full moon, our ER rooms are full. Like there's something going on. It's crazy. There's connectedness, energy, like it's happening. You cannot doubt it. And that's brilliant. I have to say, whenever there's a full moon, I feel like I don't sleep as well, like because I think I'm more like wired.
Absolutely. So this is why the movement practice is as it is. It's super common for people not to sleep. We're under an eclipse right now as we record this. I've been awake at 4 a.m. every morning, like, hey, moon, what's up?
Yeah. I look at the moon sometimes. I'm like, hey, like I see you. Like I want to sleep better tonight. Like, what are you doing? Like shining into my room. Yeah.
Totally. I wake up in our last apartment, the moon would always be in that window. And so I would wake up and go, what do you want me to know right now?
Like, hi.
What messaging is trying to get through?
Totally. That's funny. Okay. Well, now I feel like I have a better understanding. That's really neat. So it's something where you can do this like virtually on your own time, but it's there for you. That's really cool. Good job.
So it's a full, like the platform, the way it's designed, we created the original platform, but you have a new movement series every 3 days. So there's a cycle within a cycle. Okay. All of the movement patterns are multi-level classes. So it's like you go into a mixed level class, right? And you just listen to the cueing that I give. You do as much as you can do. Things you can't do, don't worry about it. Cause we're going to be past it here in just a second. Do the next thing.
Yeah.
And it aims to cultivate real results, right, in the vessel, but in a very kind, a very thoughtful, and a long game perspective in connection to the energetics at play.
Yes. And it's kind of got some physical, but also like spiritual, internal, which I think is obviously they're very connected.
Yes.
Obviously. Well,
Yeah.
some people may not think that, but.
Well, and this is the heart of what I teach, right? For those who are spiritually minded, we're a spiritual being having a physical experience.
Yes.
And so we know that. But sometimes from a spiritual aspect, we try to bypass the 3D because we want to be all high vibe. But the reality is we're here for a purpose, on purpose.
Yep.
We have to deal with the 3D incarnation. The vessel is the home of our soul. It's heaven on earth. So the tending to the vessel, making friends, making peace with the vessel, learning it's designed to move. So learning how to move with it in respect rather than beating it up, which as a culture is what we do. We teach toxic masculinity in all of its aspects. It's very empowering, super spiritual to get into real embodiment. And an embodiment just becomes this catchphrase that we all go, oh yeah, I want that, but nobody knows what the hell it means. It's listening to the vessel, taking that pause and go, how do you feel today, little vessel? What do you need? You need some more water? Do you need to go take a jog or do you need to go foam roll? Like these are different things.
Yeah. Being intuitive, listening to yourself, talking to yourself, loving yourself, healing. You have the power. Yes. It's all there. I love that. That's really cool that you said that about, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. No, because there's like so much that we're talking about that's so amazing. Oh, heaven on earth. I always say that. I feel like it's here now for us. Tell me about what you think about that.
Well, I think being human is a real weird brain bend.
It is.
Especially on, I always talk about how humaning is really hard and like, being shoved in a skin suit is like really rude. And
we
so
don't know where we're coming from. Like, I mean, you can channel that, but like, we're like trying to figure this out. Like, what? Like, why do we have this veil? This is so confusing.
And I think that those who are very connected, spiritually minded, those who are channels, those who are ministers, like all of these like practitioner aspects of it, our soul remembers what it feels like to be infinite, right? And to feel safe and everything. And then you get into a vessel and you're like, well, this shit's broken and that's a hot mess. And now I have to tend to this and I have to feed it too. Like, this is really rude. Yeah. So I do think, mine's more of a karmic perspective on it, right? Like we have lessons that our soul has agreed to. We become, a 3D incarnation to work and to learn. And I do think that the 3D being a human is the gauntlet. Like, you're going to survive this one. How are you going to do better this time? Right. It's all the triggers. Yeah. And so we continue to come back, right? To move through more of them, to heal through more of them, to make it better, to find that space of forgiveness for the hard things and to bend, the collective towards the better. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't happen quickly.
No. Yeah. I've been told I've been here like 10,000 times. So, if that's true, I'm like, this sounds exhausting, but I keep coming back and apparently I'm very drawn to the earth. I don't know.
Well, that's, for those who are old souls who have had multiple incarnations, you get exhausted with humans. Yeah. You're like, your humanity is really in your way right now. Yeah. Like, why are we being so mean? Why is this so ugly? It doesn't have to be this way. We're making choices. We're templating things. Like, we have free will. That's what it's for. Yeah. Free will is the biggest magic we have, right? We make choices. We make agreements.
Us into big trouble, but yes. Yeah.
Well, yes.
Collectively.
But as much trouble as it can get us into, it can also get us out of it.
Absolutely, which is, I think, obviously what we're in the very thick of right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Big turning point. Okay, but I guess I meant kind of like, I do think you're right. I think both of those thoughts. Like, I think the other day I was like talking to my husband, I'm like, this feels in a way like a cruel game in some ways. Like my human brain, like God just wanted to have this experience through all of us. It's exhausting. Like, can't we just all like figure it out and be happy and just like live in like a heavenly state forever? Like, we're good. You know what I mean? But then I'm also like, okay, we do have heaven on earth right now. Like, whenever I look outside, I'm just like looking at trees, but this is such a beautiful, amazing place. This is heavenly. It's just, there happens to be some hard times mixed in, right? I mean, it's amongst us, heaven and evil, good and bad, but we do have access to heavenly aspects now here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just yes to all of it.
But I think a lot of people think it's like this place that you go, it's heaven, but it's actually here too, available.
it's our soul.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, because the only reference point we ever really have is our soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the infinite stardust that keeps happening through. So in my mind, it is not external. It is here.
Yeah.
It is how we connect to the sensual pleasures and being a 3D vessel, as well as how can we, balance our humanity with our divinity, keep one foot in the ethers and in the stars and in the progress, and then one foot very present in the right now.
Yeah. This experience. Yeah. It's all about balance, because I feel like I would like to spend more time with my foot outside of, because I am just so here, and I have been for so long, but I'm in this like deep awakening process. I started the show and I've been learning so much, and I think we forget sometimes, we're so distracted here. It's so easy to just kind of like have blinders on, but there's so much available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I taught a masterclass this morning, and the coach who was teaching with me, we just talk about that you just have to try a lot of things, right? It's from the beginning of this conversation. It's like you come from religion, and Christianity is so prevalent. Like we all probably dip our toe in there, at some point, but there's so many other things to try, and that we're meant to be expansive. God, consciousness, divine spirit, that is expansive. Look at all the shit it made. Like, you think he's only going to come up with one variation of spirituality? Yeah. Like, he's got eons, it has eons. Like the consciousness is, trying things is so important as a human, because especially like as a coach and a mentor, right? Clients are coming because they want to solve some things. They want to move through some things, and they don't want to repeat things. And so when we haven't found the tools, the tactics, the habits, the thing that solves, it just means you haven't tried enough stuff yet, right? Okay. And then it is kind of how I end up with a lot of clients, because they're like, well, I haven't tried the woo-woo path yet. Here we go, right?
What do I have to lose?
Like, let's try.
Sure.
That's all.
Yeah, I know. That's funny. I have my Christian friends will be like, not to put labels, but just since we're talking about that, because they think a lot of the stuff is just probably psychopath, whatever, like planets or consciousness, whatever, like you talk to the moon, no, but they will be like, okay, this is so woo, like you would love it. Like I was deep breathing, and I'm like, girl, get it. It's there for you. Anybody can do it. It doesn't matter what God or whatever you follow, so it's all the same.
It is all the same, right? And that's the brain bend, because as humans, we want to be right. And
you want the story, like you said, tied up in a bow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not to go too far out, but right. We keep referencing it. Like the place that we are as a consciousness, as a collective, is hyper polarized, right? That's not how even science works, right? You have duality. Yes. And energy is neither created nor destroyed. It doesn't just end up on two different sides. It's going to circulate and spiral in and out of things. Right. And so I think what's most important as humans on a spiritual journey is to really learn how to live in the duality, in the yes and. Actually, you're not wrong. You're just not right for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'd be a different world if everybody was able to say that or think that way.
Right? Yeah. I wouldn't have a job then, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Well, we wouldn't have anything to talk about. Everyone's just like, we're good. We are one. No. Okay, well, this is a good segue, because I've been just because it's relevant, I've been asking pretty much every guest I have on, what is their perception of what's going on right now in the world? And we don't have to get too specific. I think you kind of probably know some of the things I'm referencing without even having to ask, but just in collective, we've been through quite a bit in the last almost 2 years in many different aspects. And I think there's more to come, more turbulence, and also more awakening. What do you feel is going on? Have you gotten any channeling that's been coming through? And also, do you have any for a positive, as we're kind of closing, just something positive for people? How can we deal with this? What can we do? What are some ways we can work on healing and staying centered in all this chaos?
Absolutely. I think that right now, what we're really experiencing is a collective healing, right? And so anybody who's gone through a healing or a spiritual awakening, it is the dark night of the soul. It is the breakdown for the breakthrough. And so if we look at 3D level things to spiritually based things, everything be breaking down because it don't work.
Yeah.
Right? It's broken. It's been broken for a really long time. And just like in a physical vessel, when you go through disorder and dis-ease in the vessel, the ailment didn't happen in that moment. It's always a buildup,
sure.
And if you have an injury, it's typically not, the injury didn't happen in that moment either. It was a buildup of imbalance in the body, and this one thing happened and it set it all off. So we're definitely in the breakdown for the breakthrough. Like on a astrological level, we're entering into, the Pluto return for the United States. Pluto is god of the underworld. The tiny snippet of Pluto is change or die, meaning not like it's actually not negative, right? It's like leaning into the shadows of like, what isn't working? What has never worked? What have you pretended is working, but it's not, it's like every shadow of ours, particularly for the US, is like, hey, look at me. Yeah. What are you gonna do about me now? Right?
Boy. Yeah.
And so it feeds into, if you want to affect change on the external collective, the only thing we ever have any sovereignty or control over is ourselves. Yeah. So change always happens from within. The way we treat ourselves with grace, the way we start to look at duality. Actually, I'm not wrong. There's no shame in this. There's no actually, there is no good or bad. It's the value we put on things. And I decide to shift the value. That's all. Yeah. Right. And so when we start to learn those things as a one unique human, then the way we engage with others, the allowances we give them, or the non-allowances we give them, like the boundaries that have just been rolled over for eons. All of a sudden, people stand up and go, hard stop, big pass, not anymore, right? And so it's a growth spurt. And that's why it's so uncomfortable and becomes polarized, because those of us who say, that doesn't work for me anymore on a very large collective level. Totally. And the other person goes, well, that's not working for me now because I don't get to tread all over you. Yeah. It's this bumping, and it's ego, and it's comfort.
And there's a lot of ego death going on, which is like uncomfortable, but also super empowering at the same time. But some of us are like here, and then some of us are here. Like that's, it's just like this constant. Yeah.
Yes. And so, our own growth spurts are one thing, but when we're bumping up against other people's, not everybody's going to do the work. Not everybody's going to grow.
Sure.
Then we have to figure out, how do we navigate that? Yep. What do we do with that? Yep. And so I just see it as this epic opportunity to heal, right? Like even in the pandemic, like that was a Saturn, conjunction. That Saturn is, father time. He's the father of the cosmos. And he says, sit your ass down. He grounds you. Go home, sit down. Think about the bullshit that just happened.
We were literally forced to stay in our houses. Yeah.
Yes. And so then you're, forced to
reevaluate your life. And
what is this life I'm living? Who am I stirring with? What have I cultivated? If I don't have a place to go, and if I'm not earning my worth, then what? Right. And it has forced a we over me perspective, although we tend to be very selfish in this culture. It's very adolescent, and it aggrandizes my choice. What can I buy? What can I purchase?
And then there's no toilet paper.
Right. Right.
I still can't get damn freaking paper towel at Costco. I'm telling you. I keep going and it's still having a problem. Like, what the hell?
Right. Well, just this, again, as a spiritual teacher, everything has its lessons. There's a way to cultivate. It's like, well, because maybe we should be using more fabric.
Yeah. And I literally was just about to say that. I'm like, that is my advice. I will tell you. It's so funny. Like, literally, that is my advice. I have no substance issues. I have no addiction. I'm very sterile. That's my issue, germy. And I just love a good, because I know it's clean. But trust me, I've been going through way more dish towels. I'm trying because I have this messy baby, but I have this obsession with paper towels. It's just so easy to clean stuff. But I know it's not good for the environment.
Well, it just forces our perspective to shift, right? And so this is spirituality 101 and healing 101 and awakening 101. The universe, if you are not listening to the whispers and the soft, guidance, they're going to make it so uncomfortable. They will push you out of places so that you will learn things. And so we're just uncomfortable, all over the place.
Happening. I really think it will. I just have this intuition. I've been hearing other, friends and channelers saying just buckle up, dude, because
Oh, I feel like, well, I always feel like there's a duality path, right? Like the lessons of the collective are not always the lessons of the individual.
Yeah.
If you've been on path and you're healing and working through things for 2022, you could really be entering into a place of auspiciousness and abundance, right? But if you've been in resistance to everything that's going down and trying to mind your way out of it and not get connected to source, right? Then you're going to have some more trouble.
That's true. That is very true. Yeah.
Because source and spirit, one, does protect. And when you're in, but again, the lessons of the collective are not always the lessons of the individual.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. And you can have kind of both too. Like I do feel like because I've gotten deeper in a spiritual, as far as like fear goes, like I haven't, being a germphobe, haven't feared COVID as much as I probably would have in the past. I'm still very aware of it. I know it's real. I'm humble. Like I try to take my precautions, but I also am just like, I do my daily mantras. Like I'm unavailable for it. Like I feel healthy. I envision myself being healthy. I am protected. I have a white light, like all the things. And I truly believe that to my core. What else can I do? I got to live my life. But then, it's uncomfortable when there's panic all the time and I like fall for a second and then I pick my back, you know what I mean? And so it's like this cycle, but I hear what you're saying. Like I'm preparing that there might be some crazy stuff happen, uncomfortable things. I think we're not done when it comes to like our financial stuff's going to go probably crazy in the next 5 years, whatever. Political will never, it's got a long ways to go. I think there's going to be, natural disasters. Obviously there's been lots of fires in the last few summers. Like there's going to still just be crazy things. But like you said, if you have that ability to tap into what that there's more, it will help you sail through all this stuff with more ease. It's wild. You can,
and even auspiciousness. I mean, this is the craziness of a 3D human incarnation. Those who are not awake, the energies are getting big about trying to pay attention and trying to shift, and so it is a lot to take in. The astrology has given us signals and signs the whole way, like how it plays out. We're always like, I wonder how this is really going to go. But it hasn't been an unknown, And so we chose this incarnation. We agreed to it at the very least. Yeah. There's no way out but through. And so we full circle back to this 3D experience in this vessel. All we can do is find the things that keep us grounded, that keep us stable, that keep us healthy in our vessel to continue the work, to continue to move the energetics forward. And that's going to look like different things to different people, but it's starting to look more like a real efficient mat practice and a tarot practice and a meditation practice. I mean, I've never made more sense than in a pandemic, right? Because the tools, most people have no idea how to navigate trauma. It's part of the issue of the United States. Right. They want to hide from it. They want to soothe, but trauma is anything that it was bad that you didn't get a say in, but you still have to experience and move through.
Right.
So we're experiencing trauma at a collective level.
Yes. Yeah. I was actually going to ask you that really quick. Like COVID, for instance, I've heard this from many, channelers too. Like it was actually manifested collectively.
Oh yeah.
But explain that to people. And like, how do you explain that? Like, why would, why, I mean, I kind of understand it, but for people that are listening, why would we choose to like have this horrible experience and people that are dying and exiting the earth? And like, why would we collectively do this? And it's obviously subconscious, I would say.
I think so. I think there's layers. And I think that every spiritual teacher will have a different variation of a viewpoint, right? But like basic energetics 101, where attention goes, energy flows. So if you are intent on something happening, you are juicing it to come to fruition. Again, this, you can prove manifestation of these types of energetics. And there is scientific proof of like visualization and like focusing on things happening. Like you can get muscle mass to improve in your vessel by spending like 15 minutes a day thinking about it.
Interesting.
That's proven, right? So, again, we're juicing things with our thoughts. Again, why intention and spell work and reclaiming the narrative of the witch is so important. Where are you putting your intention and your energy and your juice, right? Fear is so much easier. because it's simple and it puts the onus on everyone else and you become the victim. I can't do anything about it.
Sure.
Right. And so there's that level. Then there's the level of what, as a collective or a greater collective, do we need to learn? We need to learn that we're all connected. Yes. We're not separate. So what better way to prove that point than a virus that needs a host that is just going to jump from person to person, right? Oh gosh, so like, you know, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, just like 10x.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So then you layer on, it attacks the lungs mostly, right?
Our like main, yeah.
So the lungs are our grief centers. This is where disorder and disease like coagulates and solidifies when we don't get into grief, mourning, and loss. When we don't honor that aspect of human healing, it will build up.
Interesting.
Right? I mean, when it all went down, I was like, whoa, like my brain was like,
this is the kind of stuff that I like. I never thought about that specifically, the respiratory aspect of it.
And it creates, you know, in vessels, it mimics and then creates autoimmune issues, like where the vessel attacks itself.
Right.
So here we are as humans and in a culture that we, you know, are built on slavery. Like we have just unlimited amounts of inequalities happening, that the only people who are perceived to be winning are white males, right? Even I say that the white ladies in the room need more help than anybody else, of which I am one, right? Like, because we think we have privilege and freedom, but we don't.
Yeah.
And so we need to get really clear about where the grief, the mourning, and the loss is, because that's on the spectrum of healing, right? Forgiveness is really important, right? But we cannot get to that until we're like, have been mad and sad about the shit that's gone down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you said perceived, because really there's not that many of them, but yet they hold the power and the wealth of the world. They do to some degree, but they really don't have as much power as we give them. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole other episode, but
absolutely,
it's about perspective, and there's more of us than them. And we have so much more ability to put out the energy and change things, which is what's actually happening right now. So it's actually a good thing. It's just really hard going through it sometimes.
Change is slow.
Yeah.
Right. And for those who have, you know, reversed or witnessed or gone through birthing of a child, a rebirth is painful and traumatic. Yeah, right. The fact that child and mother ever survive is a miracle. And so we're rebirthing ourselves.
Wow.
Right. And we have a lot of catch-up healing to do. And so we're just witnessing that on the collective level. Like as a healer and as someone who's been through it, right? The disorder, the breakdown of the vessel because of the buildup of the energetics and the trauma. You just, from that perspective, you go, well, of course this is happening.
When you say like all that, it does seem, it's like, duh. Like, of
right?
Course this is happening. Thank you. I really wanted to, I've been hearing this like manifestation and like, I get that, but even going to like the lungs or like holding stuff in, and I don't know. Thank you for that. I think that's really important for people to like understand why this is happening. And then before we close and before I let people know where they can find you and everything, last thing is, what are just a few tips that you have? Because I do want to make it positive and give people hope. Okay, so we've got stuff inside in our lungs or like whatever, you know, how do we heal some of this trauma collectively? I mean, I try to like pray for the world and put good vibes out. That's one way, right? But like, what else can we do for ourselves or other people?
This will absolutely be a shameless plug because I teach what I think we absolutely need to be doing. The name Unicorn Wellness, the symbolism of unicorns is infinite hope, healing, and potential, right? Their mythology is that when a unicorn presents itself, right, that it's capable of bestowing complete healing in that moment, but only to the pure of heart. So if we can work on the healing of ourselves, this exponentially lends to the collective healing, right? Yeah. And so I really absolutely believe that getting on the mat, right, we're sifting out old stagnant energies, we're becoming more connected and embodied. We can listen to things that when someone says something or when we say something, all of a sudden it pings different. It goes, oh, actually that wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not going to say it that way anymore. Oh, That's not okay that they just said, I'm just going to say a little something. You know what? That phrase is really, that doesn't work for me. Can we get rid of that, or can we rework that a little bit? The change doesn't have to be epic. It is in all the small exchanges, right? And so how do we do small exchanges better? We learn how to tend to ourselves better. And so self-care, because what is the self? Ultimately, it's the soul, because that's our unique authenticity. It's soul care. Right. So for me, it is about getting on the mat consistently, because it's a 3D practice of sifting and sorting. It's like sweeping the grounds every day around your home or around your building, you know, and then in meditation, because clarity will come if we make clarity welcome. But our lives are so noisy. Yes. Right. They're noisy. God bless us. We're all trying real hard. Yeah. But if we don't take that tiny time out, 2 minutes to 20 minutes is not, nobody's getting a medal for it. Like, give your time of what you can to go, oh, this is what I remember this. This is what it feels like to feel quiet. Or I don't think I ever remember quiet. That's a whole nother ball game. Yeah. Right. And then just getting connected, because I say that meditation, like people assume that you meditate and it's like, oh God, divine ideas and like blessings. No, it's usually real busy. But because you've sitting and just pausing, you're connecting. Just a pause. Yes. Yeah. You're setting yourself at the altar of the universe. You're saying, I'm trying, I'm pausing, I'm right here. Yeah. I am willing. You know, but you've plugged in, you've tried. And so then messaging will come through in other places because you've plugged in. And different times when you're ready and yada, yada. But at least just making the effort. Yeah. And then you'll see what follows. And I'm just huge on the self-evolution work with a spiritual connection. It's not about good or bad. It's not about what you're eating per se, right? It's how do you approach it? What's the intention? Like, what's the goal here? Is it in love? Is it in growth? Is it in security and stability? You know, like, let's get back. I'm all about returning to basics, food, water, shelter, right? Shelter's the vessel. It is transformative. I mean, like, how we treat and tend our vessel and listen to it and are guided by it, it is epic, and we've been missing it. It is. I know. Sometimes I feel like I was in the shower and I was just like, dude, you were like legit, like, thank you, body. Like, I picked you and you were like serving me so well, and like just giving yourself, like, I don't do that enough, but you really do. Like, we're not very nice to ourselves in this, you know, collectively, like, you know, weight issues and like shaming and like, you got to get Botox and do all this. And like, I'm not saying any of that stuff's wrong if you do that. I'm just, the point is like, dude, we don't give ourselves enough credit. We are amazing every day, waking up, whether you have health problems or not. And like, our bodies are such a blessing, and we should totally that's a good meditation practice right there. Just like sit for 5 minutes, just grateful for my body, every cell, every heartbeat. Like, it's constantly, like, you ever think about that? Like, your organs are working right now. You're just taking it for granted. It is magic. I mean, the fact that you breathe and your organs function and you're not thinking about it, it is magic. Yeah. It is a miracle, right? Miracles are magic. Yeah. So when we get into this, like those tiny little pieces of hugging your vessel and going, gosh, we've been through quite a bit. Thank you so much. Yeah. You know? I got picked a good body. Louise L. Hay's original work, I always think it is the most simple and yet unbelievably powerful. Okay. If you do a tiny bit of mirror work, stand in front of the mirror, state your full name, and tell your damn self, I love you. That's a lot. That goes a far, long way. Because a lot of people have never said that to themselves their whole life, probably. Or haven't heard it, or haven't been told, like, you deserve to love yourself. It's because, again, it starts the self-love, and then you can, but that's beautiful. Because if no one's ever witnessed that, you know, and if people come to the site and they want to try the movement practice with me, I always say, I love you very much. Thank you for getting on the mat with me. Yeah. Right. It's like making it weird, making it normal. I love you.
Yeah, because it does sometimes feel weird in the society, like or even it's uncomfortable. But even though I do love myself, to like stand in the mirror and just look at myself, I love you. Like it's awkward, kind of, because I don't normally do that. But it's like should be like super just easy to say. And yeah, I love that. That's cool. Okay, I'm gonna do that later.
Yay!
That's my first step. Cool.
I love it.
Oh, this was awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, where can people find you? Instagram, your website, like everything.
Okay. Instagram is Tandy_Gutierrez. I'm there all the time. You send me a little DM. I chat. I answer everything. It's me. Cool. And best way to get connected with my work is at the website. So it's unicornwellnessstudio.com.
Okay.
There's a little button at the top that says start here. And if you drop your email address, we have a self-care package that we put together. I love to give things. So we like give things that are really tangible and actionable. So it's a great way to connect and to see if this work is the thing that will help create the hope and the healing and the positivity in these times.
I love it. Thank you. And we'll put your information in our show notes too, so people can find it easily. But yeah. Tandy, thank you so much. This is really fun. I really enjoyed today's conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was delightful.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the content. You can find me on Instagram at RealLaurenLive and my website, Lauren.live. See you next time.